And now, once again, it's time for A Moment with Bob. Hey, Mike. When I was a kid, I read the horror comics that were supposed to rot my brain. This could explain everything. William Gaines, publisher of the infamous EC Comics and Mad Magazine, presented to young, impressionable minds Tales from the Crypt, The Vault of Horror, The Haunt of Fear. Each terror tale was introduced by the Vault Keeper, the Old Witch, or my favorite, the Crypt Keeper. As Stephen King recounts in his book, Danse Macabre, quote, one typical EC screamer goes like this. The hero's wife and her boyfriend determined to do away with the hero so they can run away together and get married. These two heels, who might have stepped whole and breathing from a James M. Cain novel, take the poor slob of a husband for a ride, and the boyfriend puts a bullet between his eyes. They wire a cement block to the corpse's leg and toss him over the bridge into the river. 2 or 3 weeks later, our hero, a living corpse, emerges from the river, rotted and eaten by the fish. He shambles after wifey and her friend, not to invite them back to his place for a few drinks either, one feels. One piece of dialogue from the story, which I've never forgotten, is, I'm coming, Marie, but I have to come slowly because little pieces of me keep falling off. End quote. Stephen King. Scary stuff, Bob writes, for little kids growing up in the 50s, almost as bad as Duck and Cover. But for sheer terror, the stories the Crypt Keeper told were harmless fairy tales when compared to what the insane Dominican nuns told the young, impressionable minds under their care. This is what Sister Mary Sinister told a roomful of 7-year-old kids 50 years ago. Imagine a steel ball the size of the earth. Every 1,000 years, a sparrow flies down and sharpens its beak upon the huge steel ball, whick, 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 and then flies away. The time it takes for the sparrow to wear away that immense steel ball to nothing, well, that would be 1 day in hell. Pretty scary, huh? But the story the insane Dominican nun told that caused me the most dread, that gave me the most fear-filled sleepless nights and panic-induced stomach aches, was this. There are 2 trains. Train A, traveling 70 miles per hour, leaves Westford, heading toward Eastford, 260 miles away. At the same time, Train B, traveling 60 miles an hour, leaves Eastford, traveling toward Westford. When do the 2 trains meet, and how far from each city do they meet? As far as I'm concerned, the most blood-curdling stories ever told begin with the words, there are 2 trains. But I submit for your consideration, as Rod Serling might say, Americans of voting age have been presented with a variation of this terror tale every 4 years for the last 28 years. The election year story goes something like this. There are 2 candidates for president. John McCain, the candidate from the right, will not withdraw troops from Iraq, but proposes an impossible victory in the immoral war the United States began. He does not rule out a war with Iran. He is against universal health care, supports GATT and NAFTA, and his energy policy is dictated by oil and gas-connected contributions to his presidential campaign. He will not restore the Constitution and erroneously believes that the Constitution established the United States of America as a Christian nation. Barack Obama, the candidate perceived to be a liberal, proposes keeping troops in Iraq until 2010. Under his so-called peace plan, using previous year's death rates, we can project that tens of thousands more Iraqis as well as another 1,000 or so Americans will die. Obama would consider missile strikes on Iran. He does not want to unilaterally reopen negotiations on NAFTA. He does not support a universal single-payer not-for-profit healthcare system. And with his FISA compromise vote, he destroyed the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution. So the problem to be answered, and as the good Dominican nuns admonished, you must show your work. Which candidate should Americans vote for who would reverse U.S. policy in the Middle East, adopt single-payer national health insurance, cut the huge, bloated, wasteful military budget, say no to nuclear power and adopt a carbon pollution tax, aggressive crackdown on corporate crime and corporate welfare, end corporate personhood, defend, restore, and strengthen the civil justice system, and prosecute the Bush-Cheney regime. Be sure to include in your calculations that, historically, liberals have always derided the Republican base for consistently voting against their best interests. Time's up! Put your pencils down and pass your ballot to the front of the class. Oh, I forgot, we don't have a paper trail, so we can't verify your vote. It won't make any difference anyway because, as the Crypt Keeper would say, it was a trick question. The correct answer is none of the above. We should have voted for Kucinich in the primary or Nader in November. But we've been indoctrinated very well. We believe that if we vote for the candidate who represents our interests, that's called throwing your vote away. And the Crypt Keeper says, regards, Bob. And thus ends another Moment with Bob, brought to you by your friends at Offshore Drilling. You can find tonight's Tales of Terror, A Moment with Bob, at the Mike Malloy website following the termination of this evening's program.